Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartley here with another episode of Presenting Champions, and today I've got a very inspirational guest who I'm very honored to have on the show. Today's guest, first of all, it's early in his morning, it's late in my evening because they're quite a big time zone, 11 hours from the UK to New Zealand. So I've got to thank him for coming on so early. But today's guest, Clinton Terry, known as the Blind Grappler for reasons that we will get into very shortly, head coach at Daredevil Jiu Jitsu, which he also set up. Despite visual impairment, I suppose being the best term, has won multiple titles in Jiu Jitsu and in wrestling as well. Just a few of them is probably not all of them. I've got 10 national and 3 Oceania titles, all against sighted opponents, obviously in Jiu Jitsu. I've got multiple wrestling championships as well. I didn't know there were so many, but I've got a list here as well. 10-time New Zealand wrestling champion, two-time Commonwealth Greco-Roman wrestling bronze medalist. Obviously, also a coach as well, coached extensively, and Clinton's students have had tremendous success in grappling tournaments all over the world. So, without further ado, that's enough of me talking about you in third person, but I just wanted to get a few of the accolades in there. Once again, thank you for coming on the show, mate. It's really appreciated.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So, hopefully, I've done that justice with some of your wins and some of your accomplishments because there is a lot, probably a few more than what I've mentioned there. But getting into it from the beginning. Now, as I mentioned to you before, I'd like to focus on some of the life lessons that you've learned along the way, your story. But for context of anyone who doesn't know the story of how it all began for you, um, you lost your sight at a young age. Obviously, tragic circumstance that you've gone on to make a tremendous positive out of. Just to give it context for people who don't know the story, are we all right to start with what happened there and in your early life and how that all began, please, champ?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually born in Australia. I try not to admit that too often though, because I am a Kiwi. It's just my parents were on holiday in Australia. It's not my fault. New Zealanders and Australia, you guys are lucky that I was born there. Um, but yeah, so I was born in Australia. My parents were on a working holiday. I was born with my sight and everything. And then we came back to New Zealand. And when I was 2.5, I got what they thought was chicken pox. And they thought that the chicken pox got infected. So they gave me penicillin to help deal with the infection. And I had an allergic reaction to the penicillin, and I developed something called Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is basically a blistering. And in a mild case, you might get it on a localized area of the body. And before I had it, an acute case in New Zealand, there'd been two cases of it. One with a boy who just had it on his arm, and one lady who had just had it on one breast. But I got an acute case, and it affected my entire body. Um, Stevens Johnson syndrome, when you get it in an acute case, especially attacks mucous membrane areas. So it attacked like my eyes, my lungs, my mouth. Um, so basically, I ended up going blind, not not so much from the allergic reaction to penicillin, but because of the Stevens Johnson syndrome, I had all these blisters under my eyelids and stuff. And basically, every time I blinked, it would scratch away all my corneas and tear ducts and all of that. And the blistering just did massive damage to my eyes. And a drastic move, and I don't know if I've talked about this before, but in a drastic move to try and to fix it, they actually cut my eyelids off and turned them upside down and sewed them back on to try and reduce the damage, but it didn't really work out. as said, like it affected my mouth and stuff as well. So my saliva glands don't work very well. So whenever I'm eating, I have to have liquids like um, because I just constantly have a dry mouth, and my lungs got quite badly affected. To be honest, when people say, "Oh, it's amazing that you can do jujitsu and wrestling and do everything that I've done with my sight," I'm always surprised because my sight's never really what I think is, I don't know, like for me personally, in actual training terms, my lungs give me more problems than my sight, just because like I've dealt with my sight all my life and I'm used to like coming up with solutions and finding ways around it and stuff. But my lungs, there is no solution. It's just train hard. Like last night, I'm just getting ready for a couple of international comps over here. So I was doing shuttle runs at the end of training. And at the beginning of summer and winter here, when there's a drastic temperature change and it's really humid, it was really stormy last night. Um, I just couldn't breathe after doing shuttle runs. Like I'm sitting on the side of the mat, coughing my lungs out, like it sounds like I'm dying, and like the fact that I can perform with such big damage in my lungs is always what surprises me, rather than that I can do it with being blind. Because my blindness, I've always been brought up by my mum that that isn't an excuse not to do things. So uh, yeah, but yeah, so that's kind of how I lost my sight. Then I kind of had a, well, I don't know, fairly normal upbringing for a kid, I guess, except my mum was super tough on me, which I was super thankful for. My mum always said, Clinton, you live in a sighted world. The world isn't going to adapt for you. You need to learn how to survive in the world. So she was really, really tough on me and super insistent on me being independent. Um, so yeah, that's basically the beginning parts of the story.
It is incredible. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure you're used to telling it because people probably ask you all of the time. But it is incredible. I mean, I get what you're saying. For you, it's normal in a way, so you're used to it. But it is still remarkable. And with your lungs, I mean, I wasn't personally aware of that aspect, even when I was doing the research on this. So that is exceptional. I mean, everything that you've overcome to get where you are. There's even more than I realised. So um, I don't think words do that justice, to be honest. But it is amazing. Obviously, moving on with a few other aspects of this in terms of getting into wrestling, getting into this, because the thing is, jiu-jitsu, you often come up around jiu-jitsu, but as I understand it, obviously the extensive wrestling background came first. So can you talk to us about um, basically your early inspirations? I mean, you said about your mom being super tough on you. You said about that. At what point did you start to think, I can compete in competitive sports. I can go a long way with this. Was it a gradual process, or just walk us through, those early years of competition, basically, when that side of it first started out for you, please?
Well, I've always been interested in sport from a young age. I've tried almost everything. I've tried everything that my brothers tried to do. So, for example, and there's two examples here. One of me that I try everything, and one with my mum's toughness, and also with her support. So, my brothers, as brothers do, they joined teams when they're younger, and some of my brothers joined a soccer team or football team, and I wanted to do it. So I went down to the club rooms. We're in Napier, and the team were actually really good. They were like, "Yeah, you can join in," and it was just like a, I don't know how to describe it. I guess like an amateur kids thing, but they had competitions and stuff. Every weekend they played games and that. And I went down and I started doing it. And the Blind Foundation here in New Zealand found out that I had joined a soccer team, and they contacted my mom, and they said to my mom, "Oh." look, you've got to pull him out. He can't do this because when he finds out that he can't do it, and he will find out that he can't do it, he's going to be crushed. Like, and he's not going to be able to handle it. So the responsible thing is pull him out. Don't let him do it or whatever. And my mom said, no, I'm not going to do that because he needs to find his own limitations. Like, yes, he probably is going to find out that he can't do it, but that's an experience that he has to have himself. Like, if he doesn't try, how do we know what he can and can't do? So I kept going to the trainings and that, and then I went to a game, and obviously, football, someone kicked the ball one way, and Clinton was running the wrong way, and all of this stuff. And then I went to another game, and the same thing happened, and I realized that I was disadvantaging the team. So I went to the coach and I said, look, I realized I was about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9. And I said, I know that I'm holding back the team, but I want to keep doing soccer. Can I keep coming to practice? And they were like, yeah, of course. Like, they're a very inclusive team. They didn't even say they were gonna, like, they wanted me to leave the team because I was holding them back. I didn't like holding them back because I'm competitive. I like winning, and I knew I was holding the team back. So I said to them, and did it hurt when I realized that I couldn't play competitive soccer, and I couldn't keep up with these kids and whatever? Yeah, of course it did. I hate, like, anything that I have to say, oh, I'm not good enough or I can't do it. Um, but I realized that I couldn't be competitive, but I still went and did the practices with them, and we played games at practice and stuff. So uh, and they made the effort to include me and make sure I got the ball and stuff at practice. So I kind of I got to participate. But the good thing about that was, my mom didn't listen to the Blind Foundation and said, he's got to find his own limitations. Like, let him find out whether he can do it or not himself. And that was kind of my mom's attitude. So I tried all sorts of things. I tried playing cricket, rugby. Oh man, I've done pretty much everything my family did. I've played airsoft, that was fun. I've done medieval reenactment stuff like fighting with actual metal swords. Yes, I have done that. With armor and stuff on. That's real fun when you're blind, by the way. Uh, quite scary. But we moved to this small town called Featherston. That's where I started playing airsoft, and there wasn't really much to do there. So one day I was 16 at the time, 16, 17, and I got a caravan. I was living in the backyard, and my brother came and knocked on the door, and he's like, man, Clinton, you never believe what I found. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, a wrestling team. And I thought he meant like WWE wrestling and stuff. So I was like, go away. He was like 9 at the time. And he was like, no, come on, Clinton, come and have a look. And I was like, nah, go away. Like, older brother to younger brother type of thing. And my mom came out and she's like, oh, Clinton, just go with him to shut him up. Like, go down and have a look, whatever. It won't hurt you. Just go do it. So I put my stuff on, and in very bad taste and a bit of a sulk, I was like, okay, let's go then, whatever. And I went down the road with him, and we walked in, and here's these guys training inside the circle. And I was like, oh, there's no ring or ropes or anything here. What's going on? So I talked to the coach, and he's like, oh, yeah, it's Olympic style wrestling. And I was like, oh, that's super cool. And he's like, oh, if you want to give it a go, come down to training on Thursday night. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went back with my gear, jumped on the mat, and started wrestling with these guys. And I'd always, like, because I've got 3 brothers and a sister, so me and my brothers would always play for it and actually fought each other, and as you do with your brothers. And I realized, man, this is just, professional play fighting. This is awesome. I can do this. So I started training with the team, and after about 8 weeks or 10 weeks, it wasn't very long, they were going to a competition, and I asked them if I could go, and they were like, yeah, of course, come along and give it a go. So I went to the competition. Oh man, the first night before I competed, I was so nervous. I didn't sleep the whole night. And in the morning, I got up and we went to the competition, had my first fight, and I lost in 30 seconds. I got pinned in 30 seconds. But I was like, man, this is cool. I got to go out there. It was all on my own terms. Like, it was just me and the other guy. I got to, compete and all of that. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna start competing. So I started competing. I lost my first 40 fights without scoring a single point. And sometime in that time frame, I decided I wanted to be a national champion. And a lot of people, the Featherston Wrestling Club, were quite supportive, but a lot of people in the wrestling community were like, you should quit wrestling. You shouldn't invest your time into it. You're never going to get anywhere, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I'm going to be a national champ, whatever. Uh, I won a couple of matches, but not very many. But then in 2005, a Japanese guy moved to New Zealand. His name's Koji Hirabayashi, and he literally changed my life because he was teaching a seminar at the gym, and I was there training. And then after he was moving to New Zealand, he was going to start coaching with the team that I was training with. And after the training, he had really bad English, so it wasn't quite like this, but basically he came up to me and he said, oh wow, I've never seen a blind person wrestle before. It's amazing. And I was like, oh, thank you. And he's like, oh, what do you want to do with wrestling? And I said, I want to be a national champion. And he was like, oh, well, you've got a lot of work to do, like, but how about we get on with that and start working towards it? And I was like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah, well, that sounds like an awesome goal to me. How about we do this? I'll give you extra wrestling lessons and work with you after training. And then you help me with my English. And I was like, man, that sounds like a good deal to me. So I would always go to training. And my rule at training was I was always the first one on the mat and the last one off. So I would always make sure I was at training, ready to get in the door as soon as the door opened. I would get, like, everybody else would be talking. I'd get my wrestling boots on as fast as I could, and I'd be on the mat doing drills by myself. Like, and then, after people would be leaving, they finish, and I'd be doing drills or fitness or something by myself. And they're like, Clinton, we're packing up, like, get off the mat type of thing. So after that, after he said he'd take me on, after training, he would coach me by myself and he would help others as well, but he'd mainly give me extra help and he'd work with me 15, 20 minutes. And then he would drive me to the train station to get my train home. And the whole way there, we would talk English. And, while he was coaching me, he'd be like, oh, if I get things wrong, please correct me and all of that. Because he just wanted help with spoken English. So we did that. We trained together for 3 years and I started winning the odd bronze medal. And then I started winning the odd silver medal. And then in 2000, the end of 2007, I won my first national title. And I was like, man, this is awesome. I've made it. I'm good at wrestling now. And I got selected for the New Zealand wrestling team for the Oceania champs. And 2008, it was the qualification for the Beijing Olympics. So I went over to the Oceanias and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do well. And again, I got smashed. So I came back to New Zealand and I said to Koji, oh man, I want to win that next year. And he was like, sweet, you know what the level is now. Let's start working towards that. I started training with him super hard. The next year I went back, won my first Oceania title, and then I ended up with 10 national titles for wrestling. The Oceania titles you said at the beginning, they were actually for wrestling, not jiu-jitsu. So 10 national titles, 3 Oceania titles. I went to the Commonwealth champs twice. I never made the games. I never qualified, but I medaled at the Commonwealth champs. And I was the first blind person to ever compete at what was then the Fila Wrestling World Champs. And that was a good day because I was the first blind person to ever compete at the Wrestling World Champs. I was the first New Zealander to do Greco-Roman at the Wrestling World Champs. and I was the first New Zealander to do both freestyle and Greco-Roman at the same World Championships. So that was pretty cool. So that was pretty much wrestling. Um, then I started after I won my first national title. I got asked to help coach a kids team for wrestling, and I started coaching those guys. So I went to the World Champs in 2013. So I'd been coaching that team for about 5 years. Then in 2014, I realized that there were two kids that were really, really good in the team, and they were going to start coming up into my age and weight division. So I had kind of a dilemma like, do I coach these kids to beat me and take my New Zealand team spot? Because with wrestling, it's not like jiu-jitsu. With jiu-jitsu, except for ADCC, you can pretty much go sign up to any competition you want, right? Whereas with wrestling, you have to qualify for everything. So I was like, well, do I coach them to take my national team spot, or do I do a bad job so that I can keep my national team spot? And I was like, well, I've done everything that I wanted to achieve in wrestling. I'll retire from wrestling and let them take the spots. And I called it, this year at the Commonwealth Games. My two boys were there representing New Zealand. One of them lost in the first round, and one of them got fifth place. So, um, you know, so yeah, that was kind of that. With my coaching career with wrestling, I don't know how many national titles my team won over the time that I was coaching. Um, we won a lot of Oceania titles as well. In 2014, I took a team of seven, I think it was, to the Oceania champs. We won 21 gold, seven silver, and three bronze. And two of my kids qualified for the Youth Olympics. So I've had kids go to the Youth Olympics. I've had kids go to the cadet and junior world champs. One of my guys that I coached went to the Olympics in 2012. So, as I said, two of my boys that I coach, I'm not currently their coach, but two of the boys that I coached when they were younger, they were at the Commonwealth Games this year. So a lot of my kids that I coached wrestling with did really well as well. So, yeah, it was a pretty crazy ride. And that doesn't even include jujitsu. That's just the early wrestling that you wanted me to talk about. It just takes forever.
No, well, it's a great answer to the question because there's so many different things that you went into there, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. It just illustrates so much about your mindset and so much about your belief and everything. These are the things that we'll get into more in a moment. As I mentioned, I'd like to sort of do the interview in two halves, sort of thing, with this first half talking about some of the actual accomplishments themselves. This second half in a moment talking about some of the lessons in more depth. Even though you've mentioned a few, but we do have to give a mention to the jiu-jitsu as well. I mean, I can't really leave that out because it's so cool how you transitioned from wrestling, from something that had become comfortable to you, to a degree, even though you were training very, very hard, to jiu-jitsu and like a whole new challenge and a whole new situation. So let's just talk a little bit about that in the context of the inspiration for it, first of all, but also some of your proudest moments in jiu-jitsu as well, some of your highlights, a little bit about that. And then from there, we can move on into the whole life lessons and the whole philosophy type of thing. So, sort of two sides to the question: your transition into jujitsu and your proudest moments in jujitsu. Let's get into that side of it, champ.
so, um, so the way I transitioned into jiu-jitsu in 2007, I'd like to say, maybe slightly earlier, maybe the end of 2006, a guy came to the wrestling gym who was a jiu-jitsu purple belt. And of course, like being wrestlers and stuff, we were like, oh, it's another grappling style. Like, let's see how, what's jujitsu? Like, and they're showing us some moves and stuff, and we're like, yeah, we'll try some jujitsu on you, and we're just rolling around the mat and stuff, just having some fun. And the guy said to me, oh, you should come out and try a class one night. So I was like, okay, cool. And I went out and I visited a Pedro, and like I hadn't quite won my first national title at this stage, right? So I went out and visited Pedro and that at Tukaha Jiu Jitsu, and I enjoyed the class. Like it was really fun. Like when you start getting up to the higher levels of something and you're just grinding every day and stuff, it can get a bit boring, a bit monotonous, tough. So sometimes you just want to go do something different that's related but kind of fun. And I had fun and stuff. So and then this guy kept training at wrestling. He was there to get better at wrestling for his jiu-jitsu. His name's Mike Hall, Malaysian guy. He's now a black belt. So we developed a friendship, and I coached him a lot with his wrestling and helped him with his wrestling and stuff. And we sort of became friends. So and I wasn't really doing jujitsu. I just went and did the one class. And when we had a break from wrestling, like we might have a week off from the gym or whatever, I'd go visit the class and just jump in, and they'd show me a few things, I'd show them a few things, but I wasn't real serious about jujitsu. But what Mike would do, my house was on the way home from where he was training to his house, and he had these real thin puzzle mats in the back of his car, and he'd be like, oh, Clinton, I learned this real cool thing at jiu-jitsu tonight. I just want to work on some details on it. Can I stop by and practice on you? So he would, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. And he would come by and he would set up the puzzle mats in the lounge room, and then he'd use me as a training dummy and practice these techniques and stuff on me. And then, and then he would show me and stuff. We weren't really sparring because it was like 2 by 2 meter mat in my lounge room. And it was like like the really thin puzzle mats. So it was kind of cool, So I kind of had that relationship with jujitsu, and like me and Mike knew each other for a while. So from 2007 to 2014, I probably pop in and visit Tukaha like maybe 3 or 4 times a year, like not very often, but I kind of build a relationship with them. And I started learning more and more about jiu-jitsu because as I got more experience in wrestling, MMA guys started coming over to the gym and started training wrestling with me to get better for the MMA fights and stuff. I mean, in 2014, when I was thinking about retiring, Mike said to me, oh, Clinton, I've got this young lady who is going to have an MMA fight. She's a white belt in jiu-jitsu. Her striking's pretty good, but she's fighting a purple belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Can you do anti-wrestling with her for the camp? She's fighting in, I think it was like 10 weeks out. And he was like, I don't want you to, like, you don't need to go crazy at wrestling. I just want you to work in how not to get taken down. I was like, okay, cool. So I worked with her for like 10 weeks. Really nice girl. And she won her fight. I was there in the corner. That was super cool. She won her fight. And then I was kind of talking to him about, I'm going to stop wrestling competitively because Matt and Brahm, I don't want to be in their way or whatever. And he was like, oh, well, I've been talking to Pedro, who's the head of my gym. And he was like, we've been looking for a wrestling coach or a takedown coach at Tukaha. Would you be interested in swapping wrestling lesson? You take a wrestling class once a week, and then you can get a membership to the gym, and you can come and learn jujitsu. And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. Cool, I'll do that. So I was retired. I'm like, okay. And I'd always made jokes with him and with the jujitsu community. Oh, jujitsu will be my retirement sport. It's so easy compared to wrestling, like the physical side of it. And it's like, just wrestlers talking crap to jujitsu guys because they're like, oh yeah, jujitsu wrestlers, you guys only know how to take it down to the ground, but once you're down there, you don't know how to finish it off. I'd be like, oh, well, jujitsu is a retirement sport. It's so easy that anyone can do it kind of thing, just playing around. So I was like, okay, I'm retired. I'm going to jujitsu. And ever since I was a kid, watching martial arts movies and stuff, I've always wanted to be a black belt, like what kid when they're a kid doesn't have that kind of, oh yeah, black belt sounds super cool. And wrestling doesn't have any belts. So I was like, oh, this is cool. So I started training and stuff, and then they were all going to the nationals, and they were like, "Oh, Clinton, you should enter." And I was like, "Oh, all right then, cool, why not?" So I entered the national champs. Because I was a wrestler, I wasn't allowed to compete in white belt. I had to compete in blue belt, and I got a silver medal. And I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And I thought, you know what, it'd be like super cool. So many people told me when I started grappling that I wasn't going to get anywhere or do anything. It'd be super cool if I was a national champion in two different grappling styles. And when I thought about it, it was actually three because when I got national titles in wrestling, that was for both freestyle and Greco-Roman. So I was like, cool. So my first year when I was white belt, fighting blue belt, I got silver at both the gi and the no gi nationals. And then I got given my blue belt after about 9 months of training. And the next year, I went to the nationals and I got gold in both gi and no gi nationals. And then I did it again the next year. Um, yeah, so like I was a white belt for 9 months. Then I was an actual blue belt for 2 years. Actual blue belt, I won the nationals. I defended my title twice. So I won it the first year, and then I defended the next year. Then I got my purple belt. But in the meantime, after the in 2015, just after I'd won my first national title, they were like, "Oh, we're going to go to the Pan Pacific Champs in Australia. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Oh man, I'm having fun competing in jiu-jitsu. Why not? I'll do an international comp in jiu-jitsu." So I went over to the Pan Pacific Champs and I got gold in. Oh, actually, they they teased me so much about this because I went over and I was in blue belt and I got bronze in no gi, and then I got gold in the gi, and they're all like, "See, you're not a wrestler anymore. You got gold in gi, not no gi. You're not a wrestler anymore. You're a jujitsu player." I remember them teasing me so much about it. And I got gold in the nogi absolute, and I actually tore my intercostal muscle in half and really injured myself in the nogi absolute. And then I was 3 fights into the gi absolute, and I'd won them all. And then my rib dislocated and went up over the top of another rib, and and they stopped me competing, so I didn't get to compete. So yeah, I did that. I've competed at Pan Pacs at or Pan Pacific Champs at blue and purple belt. I've gotten gold at both belt divisions. And then I thought, you know what, it'd be a cool end to my story or a rounding out of my story if I could win a world title in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So in 2016, I went to the adult world champs. I lost my first fight 2-2, one advantage. And I was like, man, I can do this. Like, I can win a world title. I'm competitive here, even against sighted people. So the next year, I went back to the adult world champs and I lost 10-6 in the first round. And then later that year, I went to the World Masters. That was a really weird feeling because I won my first match by submission, and the guy didn't get a point on me. And then my second match, I lost 0-0 ref's decision. So I walked out of the World Championships and I'm like, I got eliminated, but nobody scored a point on me. This feels weird. Like what? Um, but I was like, no, I can do this. So um, then the next year I went back my first year at purple belt and I lost my first match. And then my second year at purple belt, I was like, oh, I need more international experience. So I went to the Pan Americans and I went there just for more match experience at higher level IBJJF. And I went 4 matches without dropping a point. And suddenly I'm in the final and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in the final with the Pan Americans. And I made a mistake, and the guy beat me with a real basic, just basic half guard sweep, got 2 points, came up. I couldn't get it back, but I got silver and went back to New Zealand, worked on my guard, and went to World Masters that year and uh, got bronze medal in a 50 something man bracket. And it was super cool. And yeah, just having fun, like my daughter also does Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. We've been traveling around the world and stuff. You said like what's one of some of my favorite moments of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu? Well, one of the things that IBJJF do for me, which is a bit unusual, is they let someone guide me to the mat. So when we were at the World Champs, I'd taken my daughter to Las Vegas, and she was there competing as well in other comps, and she got to walk me out to the mat. And in the quarterfinal match, which I knew was basically the medal match, because if I won it, I knew I was going to get a medal no matter what. I drew the guy who was ranked number 5 in the world at that stage at purple belt, not just in my division, but in IBJJF, he was ranked number 5 in all of purple belt. And I was like, oh no. And I went out and I took him down straight away, got my 2 points, and then basically stalled him out. And I won it. And I was like, oh my God, I just beat the number 5 guy in the world and I'm going to get a world medal. Wow, this is crazy. And I went off the mat and I hugged my daughter and I've like got tears and stuff. And she's like, what wrong? Did you get injured? And I was like, no, or I just won a world medal. And that was just absolutely crazy. Like, um, yeah, so that was probably my favorite moment in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Wow.
And the fact of just sharing this journey of my daughter. We train together, we compete together, we have been like to Australia, America together. She's a green belt now, who this year she wants to win a medal at the World Champs next year at juvenile blue belt. So basically, this year in New Zealand, she's only competed against blue belt adults, and she's been winning. She either competes against blue belt juvenile or blue belt adult here most of the time, and she's won a lot of blue belt gold this year.
Wow.
Um, for example, she's done 3 tournaments in the last 4 weeks, all against juveniles and adults, and she's gotten 5 golds and a silver. So. Um, she's pretty good. And so now when we're at comps, a lot of the time my daughter corners me in matches. So it's kind of cool that my 15-year-old is able to like corner me in matches. So, but just being able to share that with my daughter is so amazing.
It is
So
incredible.
yeah.
I mean, there's so much there from your favorite moment to the obviously the family connection. There's so many things, including how you set the goals and you complete them in that way. It's exceptional. I have to lead this into the sort of the final stage of the interview, really, and it's not. Um, it's sort of one big question. I suppose that's been the theme of the morning, the evening, whatever of our talk. But in terms of the life lessons, I mean, I read a great article that I think was on a specialist jiu-jitsu website of some form of like the 10 lessons you've learned from life, basically, from everything you've overcome and what have you. But however many you want to share, I don't mind. But the essential ingredients for success, in your own personal view, whether this is success in sports or whether it's success in life in general, because I really think a lot of what you overcome is applicable to anything that people want to go after. So with that in mind, with that inspirational side of it in mind, obviously this is going to go around the world, so it's a great opportunity for a little bit of your advice to sort of filter on down. What would you say are some of the essential ingredients to success you've learned along the way in your own journey that people can apply to life? I have no idea where this question is going to go, but I know it's going to be something good. So over to you with this one, champ.
So lessons, and I'll give you some stories and examples and stuff along the way. But my things that I tell people that you need for success. Well, the first thing is whatever it is that you want to do, you have to decide that you really want it, right? Like you can't just be like, oh, like for me, I wanted to be a national champion in wrestling. We'll take that as the example. It wasn't for me, it's not like it's easy for people to say, yeah, I want that. But the thing is, when you truly ask yourself whether you want something, you have to ask yourself not how much do I actually want it and how cool will it be to have it, but what am I willing to sacrifice to get it? Because if you have a huge goal, you are going to have to sacrifice stuff. Like, unfortunately, there's very few people that are going to be absolutely exceptional at absolutely every area of their life, right? So I sat down and I said to myself, I want to be a national champion when I first started. And I said to myself, what am I willing to sacrifice to get there? And the answer for me was basically everything except my family. So I don't I don't have or I didn't have I have more friends now because I opened a gym and I have friends through the gym in it. But I basically don't have any friends or very, very, very few friends outside of jujitsu that I don't know through jujitsu and stuff. Because I literally for from about 2000 to 2008 or 2014, I basically did nothing but wrestle and spend time with my family. That's all I did. Like people would be like, "Oh, we're going out clubbing tonight. Do you want to come?" No, I've got to get up and train tomorrow morning. Oh, this person, come to birthday party. Oh, I can, but I can only be there for an hour and a half, or whatever, and I've got to go home because I've got to train in the morning. Um, like, oh, we're going to the beach today to hang out. Oh, I would, but unless you guys want to wait and go after training, I've got to train. Oh, no, no, we want to go at this time of the morning. Oh, okay, then I'm going to go to train. Like, you know, you've got to sacrifice things to do it, and you've got to decide what am I willing to sacrifice. And so, for me, it was everything except my family. And when I met my wife, I've been married I've been with my partner for 22 years. Um, when I met her, we were very young. We were still teenagers, and I was just starting out, and I just made this decision. And I literally said to her, I said, "You like when we were thinking about dating and stuff. I said you might not want to date me because I want to be a national champion, and that means I'm going to commit a lot of my life to it. So either you're interested in supporting that and you're happy to work around it, or you're not." um and she said she was and everything, and we got together, and then we ended up having my son. And of course, like as I said, like I was willing to sacrifice everything except family, and then we became family, and my son was born, and all of that. So obviously, like if my son was sick or whatever, I would have time off training, or if they needed me for a family thing, I'd have time off training. But other than family and my wife and kids needing me, I sacrificed everything else to be at training or to go to a competition or something like that. So like goals sound good, and people think about oh, that would be nice to have of your goal. But realistically, if it's a huge goal, my first thing is decide if you really want it. And the way you decide whether you really want it or not is what are you happy to sacrifice. The next thing that you need is self belief. Like, if you don't believe that you can achieve something, not many other people are going to believe you. You're going to come across way more doubters than you are believers until you make it. Once you make it, everybody believed in you, and oh, I believed in you, Clinton. I always knew you could do it. I'll tell you a funny story about that in a minute. But in the beginning, when you set like a huge goal, I want to be a national champion, I want to be a millionaire, I want to be this, I want to be that. Like that's a huge goal that most people can't even comprehend. Like setting a huge goal like that. Why would you? People ask you like, why would you set a huge goal like that? Because most people are happy to just get by with their 9 to 5 and get enough money to drink in the weekend or party or whatever. Like they're happy with medium, like just doing enough to get by, just enough to survive. And they don't understand like drive to want to achieve huge things. So you're going to come up against so much self disbelief that you have to believe in yourself. I was at a wrestling comp cornering my kids a few years back, and the guy who was the head of the New Zealand Wrestling Union when I started wrestling was there, and he said to me, he was like, "Oh, Clinton, do you know who it is?" And I was like, "Yeah, I remember everybody who told me I wouldn't make it when I first started wrestling." And he was like, "Oh, I never said that to you." I said, "Yes, you did. You told me that I should quit wrestling because I was never going to get anywhere. Lucky I didn't listen to you, eh? Because look at where I'm at now." And then he had the cheek to turn around. He said, "Oh, yeah, but what I said motivated you, didn't it? Like, it made you want to be better or push to achieve and all of that." Like he was acting like it was some big favor that he did me, that when I first started, he was like, "Oh, you're not going to get anywhere. Don't waste your time with wrestling or whatever." And I was like, "No, that's not how that was. It's lucky I didn't quit because of where I'm at." And I kind of walked off. Like I was super mad that he put that spin on it. So you got to believe in yourself. The third thing I would say to people is you need to find one person that will believe in you, because you can have the strongest belief in yourself ever. And sometimes things are going to go bad and things are going to go wrong and things are going to suck and the grind's going to suck. And you're going to be like, "Oh, is it really worth it?" Like you're going to have those moments of self doubt. And that's when the person that believes in you and believes in your vision is really important. And the person that believes in you is not really their job's not really to be like, "Oh yeah, I believe in you," and to be a cheerleader. Their job's to keep you honest. When you say like, "Oh man, it's getting hard" or whatever, they're like, "Oh, you're gonna be a national champion. Go to training." "Oh, I'm so sorry, I don't want to go to training tonight." No, you're gonna be a national champion. It doesn't matter if you're sore. Get your butt off the couch and go to training. Uh, you know, and yeah, more than being a cheerleader, the person that believes in you is there to keep you honest. And when you start flagging, they just give you that kick up the butt, like, "Come on, don't give up on your goal. You're going to achieve your goal." So that's the third thing I think people need. The fourth thing I think people need is the ability to goal set. So it's all good and well having a huge goal. Like, I'll use world champion as the example this time because it's a bit further out. I want to be a world champion. Well, that's cool. That's a really nice goal to wake up and decide one day. But the problem is, world champion from waking up and deciding I want to be a world champion to world champion is probably going to be quite far away. So you want to have goals that on the way you can kind of use as milestones and goalposts and stuff like that. Because if you achieve the small goals, you feel like you succeeded and you achieved something. And so it keeps you going towards the big goal. A really good one of this, and I had a young kid and he wanted to be on the youth Olympic team, and he was the second best wrestler in his division in New Zealand, and we had a year for him to beat this kid that was the number one. So I said to him, "Okay, we're going to break this down into," because I knew they were going to have 4 or 5 matches throughout the year. I said, "We're going to break this down into bite-sized parts. The first match, we're going to go out there, and if you get to the end of the first round, we're going to celebrate like you're the champ. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if you make it to the end of the first round, you won." So he goes out there, and I said to him, remember, the only goal is you have to make it out of the first round. I don't care about anything else. So he goes out there, he fights, he wins, he gets out of the first round, he goes back out. The kid technically superiorities him, and he's lost. And he comes back to the corner. I'm like, yeah, like I'm celebrating, like, yeah, you did it. You won that, you won, that's it. And everybody's looking at me like, man, he's crazy. What's going on? So the next time I said to him, okay, this time you have to make it out the first round, and you have to score points on him. So I don't care how many points you get, you've just got to score on him and then make it out of the first round. So he went out and he attacked the guy straight away, bang, got his points. Then he waited to the end of he made it out to the end of the round. And then the guy technically superiorityed him again in the second round, and he came off the mat. And again, I'm celebrating, like, yeah, you won, man, you did it, like, that's it. The third match, I said to him, okay, now you have to get the points and you have to make it to the end of the match. So he did that. And then at the Nationals, I said, okay, you can get points. You can make it to the end of the match. Now you go and you beat him. And he went out and he beat him. So we did it by small goals, take the small steps and celebrate the little victories, because, like, all the little victories add up to big victories. I tell kids this all the time when I'm coaching kids, and they like when they like they want to get submissions and they're rushing to get submissions. I say to them, man, if you rush a submission and you do like bad entries and stuff, it's like you're trying to bake a cake and you just threw all the ingredients into the oven and you just turned the oven on, but you didn't prepare it. Like, you didn't mix everything together and you didn't do all the preparation work. So all you got was bad tasting ingredients. You didn't get a cake. You got to get your ingredients. You got to mix them all together. You got to turn on the oven. You got to bake the cake, and then you get a delicious cake. Like, don't rush it. Like, you've got to, you got to do all the steps. And the last thing that you need, and it's the easiest one in some ways, but it's the hardest one, is hard work. You've got to be willing to work hard. You've got to be, like, if you really want it, you've got to be willing to work harder than everybody else. Like I told you, when I was wrestling, and even now, like, if I'm in camp getting ready for a big tournament, I'm first on the mat. They're warming up, getting ready. I'm last off the mat. I'll always put in a bit extra. I'll put in a bit of extra cardio, whatever. Um, you know, when you're there drilling, you're not there to talk or whatever. You're there to get the reps in. Like, I made my whole team do burpees last night, because my adult team, because we were just doing basic stand up from close guard as part of our warm up, right? And I was like, okay, everybody do it 20 times each. And they all started, and the whole team are still doing it, but there are two guys sitting there, and they're just sitting there. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we've done our 20. I was like, yeah, really? They're like, yeah. I was like, you can do it perfectly, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, everybody stop. Everybody in the class stops, and everybody knew what was about to happen, because I do this quite regularly to people. And I knew one of them couldn't do it properly, so I said to him, oh, come out here. And I get him in my close guard. I said, okay, stand up from close guard. If you get it wrong, everybody does 20 burpees. And he did it wrong, so the whole team does 20 burpees. And I said to the guys, man, like, when I say 20, it's a guideline, because, like, the slowest person in the class is going to be the slowest person. So the minimum is 20. But if you're the fastest or the best in the class, don't settle for the minimum. That's not how you get good. Like, yeah, if you've done your 20 and you did it fast and you're faster than everybody else, start doing sets of 5 and 5 or 10 and 10 until everybody's done. If you're the best in the room at it, and the slowest does 20, you should have done 50. If you want to be good at something, outwork everybody. Don't be lazy and do the bare minimum. So those are kind of my 5 things that I tell people. Like, if you want to be successful, Those are kind of the things you need. Um, you know, but I understand like there are different things with jujitsu and stuff. That's where if you want to achieve really huge goals. For me personally, now that I coach and I own a gym, I see my job as a coach. I'm a facilitator. So my job, like people think my gym's all about competition because, uh, you know, I've been coaching for a long time. My guys have been known, especially my kids' team, have been known to do pretty well. We've been climbing up the rankings. For example, we just did a competition this weekend. We had 20 athletes. We had 54 matches. We had 45 wins and 9 losses. For 20 athletes, we got 20 gold, 7 silver, and 2 bronze. Only one of my athletes didn't medal because it was a gi and no gi tournament. Um, so people think that we're just about competition at Daredevil, but that's not true. What I am as a coach, I'm a facilitator. So if you come to the gym and you say to me, Clinton, I want to be a world champion, I'm going to ride you. Like, if you're not at training one day, I'm going to be like, why aren't you at training? I had a headache. That's not an excuse. Be at training. Are you injured? No. Oh, why weren't you at training? I'm injured. Well, why weren't you on the sideline watching and taking notes and like giving advice to your training partners and that? Like being injured is not an excuse to not be in the gym, like watching and taking information. Oh, you weren't at training? What videos of matches did you watch last night? Did you watch rule videos? Did you study rules? What did you do to help you get to towards being a world champion? Oh, I was sore and tired and that I didn't do anything. I just rested. Oh, so you're telling me you don't really want to be a world champion then? But so that's how I'll treat someone that says to me, "Oh, I want to be a world champion." If you say to me, Clinton, I want to do jujitsu because I want to have fun and I want to meet people and I want to make friends and all of that. If you're not at training, the next time I see you, I'm going to be like, oh, I noticed you missed training. Are you okay? You're like, oh, I was a bit tired and I had a headache. Oh man, did you have a really good rest? Are you feeling well now? Are you feeling more energized? If you're still not feeling 100%, don't overdo it tonight because I'd rather have you consistent at training rather than like having time on and off and whatever. If I see that you're maybe a bit shy or whatever, I'll try and introduce you to people and like introduce you into conversations and like make sure you're meeting people and all of that because my job isn't to project my mentality onto people or project the goals that I've had over my wrestling and jiu-jitsu career. My job is to provide you with the experience that you want and to help you achieve the goals you want. And just because you come in with one goal when you start training with me, it's okay for you to change your goals. Like you can come in and say, I want to be a world champion. Like that seems really awesome. And then you start training and you start putting it in and all of this. And you're like, oh man, I've actually decided I don't like this. I have to sacrifice too much. Clinton's way too tough on me. Actually, this isn't, it isn't for me. Uh, I want to step it down a level and stuff. I'm okay with that too. Like, there's no problem with changing your goals. It's the same as I see a lot of people. They come and they're like, "Oh, Clinton, I'm here to train, have fun. I wanna have a fun, different way of getting fit, lose some weight and stuff." And they're there twice a week and they're having fun, and then the next thing they're like, oh, Clinton, I want to jump in a competition. What would your recommendation be? Oh, okay, well, you're only training twice a week, so if you want to do your first comp, I'd recommend doing an extra training a week and maybe doing some extra cardio, and 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 so they start building up and they want to change their goals. So I work with them because, as I said, like my job is to help as many people as I can achieve whatever goals they set. Um, I love my gym. We have some really fun people there. I have a guy who suffered a stroke and he has limited use of the left hand side of his body. He's having fun. He's learning jujitsu. I don't know if he ever wants to compete, but he hasn't decided yet. He said maybe, maybe not. But at the moment, and he's like, man, my movement and functionality in my everyday life has become better since um I came to jujitsu, because my physio told me, when I told my physio I wanted to do more and I wanted to get stronger and I wanted to move better. My physio said to me, "Oh, just be thankful that you're walking and that you're not in a wheelchair." And I said to them, "That's not enough." And they were like, "Well, just be thankful." And here I am coming to you, and you're like, "Yeah, let's push the limits and see what I can do." And I'm getting stronger and I'm moving more freely and I have more movement and stuff. So, that's super cool. I've got another girl who has just recently joined us. I just posted a video rolling with her actually on my social media. She's an amputee from the knee down, so she has a prosthetic leg, and she's having heaps of fun. And her dad is like, man, since she started jujitsu, her confidence is growing, and she's just a much more confident human now. And she's talking about competing, like, oh, I think I want to compete, Clinton. Will that be okay? And I'm like, man, I can't wait to help you compete and win a gold medal. That'll be amazing if that's what you want to do. So um, we're a very family orientated gym. We've got about 10 families or whatever that their parents and stuff train with their kids, or they all training together. And a lot of the time in the adult class for the slightly older kids, like maybe 10 and up, as long as they mature and they don't muck around in the adult class, they join in the adult class and they train with their parents, and they share the mats with them. And this weekend at that competition I was talking about, three of my families competed together. We had uh myself and two of the other dads competed with their kids, and we all got medals with our kids. Like that that's like so important to me, that we're growing that culture and stuff at the gym. And as I said, people think we're just about competing because we're getting competition results. But for me, the culture at our gym is more important. And the result of our culture and the way we are, I think, like, there's this stigma, or this thing in jujitsu that I find really weird, where if you're a lower belt and you catch a higher belt in a submission, you're not allowed to talk about it. It's kind of like, don't do that, or the upper belt will smash you next time. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. If one of my lower belts catches me in a submission, and because I want all my guys to relax at training, I want them to be like, it's okay to try stuff and to not succeed and be okay with getting better and all of this stuff. So I have this rule to encourage this thing of there's no shame in being caught by lower belts. That if one of the lower belts catches me at the end of class at our gym, we circle up and I ask them if they've got any questions or anything about the class, give notices and stuff like that. And if one of the lower belt catches me, I tell the entire class that they tap me, and everybody gets to give them a round of applause and all of that. Because what does that cost me? Like, because if I'm rolling with my white belts, am I rolling my absolute A game? The answer is probably not. Am I giving them a bit of space to work and do their thing? The answer is probably yes. Do occasionally they set up a nice submission entry and then they get into it, and I try to defend as hard as I can, and they catch me in a sub? The answer is yes, they do. Now, if I was rolling my absolute A game in that, would they get that submission? Probably not. Just because I'm not rolling my A game and stuff, and they do a nice entry and stuff and they catch me, and then I start defending 100% to try and get out, and I can't escape and they tap me, is that a legit tap? In my opinion, yes, it is. And they should get credit for it, and they should feel good because they walk out of the gym feeling like $1 million. Oh my God, I caught the coach. I got the brown belt. He acknowledged that at the end of the class, and everybody's like, yeah, well done. That's so awesome that you got him. And, but do any of my students go, oh my God, he got tapped by one of the white belts? Does that make him a crap brown belt? No, nobody thinks like that. It doesn't make me. So I think, like, the ability to relax and make it a family gym, just have fun, and that ability to just to be okay with experimenting, to be okay with being tapped by lower belts and stuff. It makes my students more happy to play stuff that they're not usually used to, and they get tapped and they get tapped and they just laugh about it and they move on. They're like, oh my goodness, I've got to get better at that, hadn't I? Because I just got tapped. And you know, my thing at the gym is I say to them all the time, like, how serious can we take ourselves? We're grown ups rolling around in pajamas. Like, we can't take ourselves seriously. This is just fun. Like, and the other thing that I tell guys at the gym and as a coach, I'm pretty weird. Although I did see a video from Keenan saying that he says the same thing to his guys, Keenan Cornelius. I tell my guys reasonably regularly, like maybe 3 or 4 times a year when we're having our sit down at the end of class. I'm like, look, if you're not leaving the gym feeling better than when you walked in 90% of the time, unless you're a competitor. If you're a serious competitor, I drop this percentage down to 80% because I realize there are going to be times when training's not going to be fun. But if you're just an average guy in the gym or girl in the gym, and 90%, 95% of the time, you're not walking out of the gym feeling better than when you walked in, you should think about going and trying another gym because at the end of the day, you pay me to teach you jujitsu and to provide a place for you to come and feel good and all of that. I'm not paying you to represent me. I'm not paying you to go to comps and represent my name and all of this. So, you have the right to be happy. And not so that if something's going that you don't like, I would hope you come and talk to me first rather than just leaving. But at the end of the day, like, I want you to be happy. I want you to enjoy jujitsu. I want you to have a great experience. I want you to do jujitsu for the rest of your life. I want you all to reach black belt. And the way you do that is by being happy in your training. And I don't get these gyms that don't like cross training. Oh, you owe me your loyalty. Why does anyone owe you loyalty? They're paying you money for a service. Like, and you hope that you can build your team culture to become more family like and really friendly and all of that. But at the end of the day, like, you know, they are paying you to give them something, not for you to be like, oh, you owe me something. I find
Absolutely.
that sort of
Yeah.
attitude a bit crazy.
Yeah. Well, wow. I mean, there's some lessons in there. There's some insights in there that I've never heard before. And there's some insights in there that are very valuable. I mean, first of all, obviously, the whole thing about lessons that you can apply to life. Um, we smashed that out of the park. I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. But in terms of the gym culture training, what people can get from it, it's absolutely exceptional. I mean, the mindset you have as a coach, and there's so much we could feed into that. I'll have to wrap this up at this point because of the time here and because of the length and a few other things. But otherwise, we'd be here until midnight, or and don't get me wrong, I'd love to like my time, and I'd love to be. But there's so much that you could lead into what you were saying there about being, about the coaching mentality, about personal growth, setting goals. I mean, there's so many things. And I'm not just saying this now. This is an absolute gold mine of knowledge, of applicable knowledge that people, that can filter on down. And that was one of my biggest expectations for this, but it's by far it's exceeded that expectation. Um, so obviously you've got a day ahead of you, and I've got a day to sort of finish. So the last thing really for me to do, Clinton, is once again to say a heartfelt thank you. I really do mean this. I thank you for your time, obviously early in your morning, and taking the time that you've taken with it to share everything you've shared and to be so open. Um, it's absolutely blown me away. I mean, I've personally learned a lot from it, but by the way, just to put that in there. But also, when we put this out there, I believe it's going to have a massive impact on a lot of people with everything you shared. Obviously, I mean, I'm going to listen to this back now as well and actually take some notes. And I'm not just saying that either about some of the lessons you've shared because you can apply it to so many things. Um, but honestly, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you so much for being an absolute open book and sharing everything you shared, man. I appreciate it so much.
Oh, thank you. And if all the people watching in that can go follow my Instagram, Blind Grappler, that would be awesome. I personally don't like social media. I think social media is, on the whole, more negative than positive. But the reason that I'm trying to grow my brand is because I'm trying to find other people like myself, blind people, or even people like, I asked Lily the other day whether I could post a video with her rolling with me with her amputee, and show people that she's rolling, because and I said to her, if just one amputee sees that and goes, man, I'm gonna go try jujitsu, and they find that it could literally change your life. And so that's what I'm trying to do with my social media. That's why I want people to follow me and share my story. Um, I get a couple of messages a month saying, either from blind people saying, "Oh man, I heard about your story. I'm going to give Brazilian Jiu Jitsu a go," or more importantly, what I like is I get messages from coaches saying, "Hey, I've got a blind student coming in for the first time. I've never coached someone with a visual impairment. Can you give me some advice on how to handle it, whatever? Because I want to give them a great experience. I want them to stick around." So that's kind of why I want to grow my social media and my brand and just keep getting out there. I'm nearly at 16,000 followers now. I'd like to get to 20,000 by the end of the year, and just keep growing it so that people can hear my story. And like, if sighted people and that take inspiration from my story, that's awesome as well. But I want more blind people and more people with disabilities in general to find Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, find grappling, because Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and grappling has given me everything. Like, I even met my wife. She wasn't a wrestler, but I met her through wrestling. I own a Jiu Jitsu school now. Like, I've been all over the world. I've shared this journey with my daughter. So I just want other people with disabilities maybe to have, even if they even have half the opportunity that I've had through grappling, it could literally change their lives. So if people could follow my page and share my page and share my story and be like, man, like, uh, nothing is impossible. And the last thing I just would like to leave everybody with, you know, whenever somebody comes to you with a big goal and you think maybe it's impossible, like if you're a gym owner or if you're a business owner or something, think about these words before you talk to somebody or before you say no. Think about this. Instead of like jumping to the conclusion, no, that's not going to be possible, keep this phrase in your mind. How about, in life, we help make dreams, not kill them?
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.